Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Mill in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Out to our great friend, Lars Larson, The Lars Larson Show, larslarson.com. Lars, good morning.
Kevin, good morning and a belated happy Easter. And isn't it sad that it's so dangerous to be a Christian on planet Earth these days?
Indeed. Of course, the mainstream press not covering it. I'm sure you'll be all over it as you were last week.
Oh,
Your thoughts?
They're covering it, Kevin. They just want to say it's just people celebrating Easter. They don't mention the C word.
Well,
they don't say Christian. And it's funny because when New Zealand happened, they had no problem identifying Muslims killed at a mosque, which is appropriate because it's part of the story. Should you also identify Christians? And I looked up this morning. There are lots of different estimates, but between the high and the low and everything else, the estimate of the number of people on planet Earth who die are murdered every day because of their faith is 10. The high number is quite a bit higher, but the pretty well accepted number is somewhere between 10 and 15 people per day murdered on Earth because of their faith. Somehow that news flash has escaped the mainstream media.
Indeed. Lars Larson joining us. KIDO Talk Radio. Lars, your thoughts on the world today. I mean, you've traveled the world. You've broadcast from Israel. What don't we get living in the Treasure Valley about the war on Christianity?
We don't. What do we get, or what should we be hearing?
What should we be hearing?
We should be hearing that to be a Christian on planet Earth these days is a very dangerous thing. That you can be murdered because of your faith, and nobody, including Muslims, including Jews, including Hindus, and every other group, should be murdered because of their faith. But we have one group on planet Earth that specializes in murdering people because of their faith. Muslims. Now, some will point out that some Muslims are murdered because of their faith by other Muslims who have a slightly different version of Islam. But when was the last time you heard about Christians murdering Christians, like Episcopalians taking on Lutherans because, well, after all, everybody knows Episcopalians are following the right path and Lutherans are not. I'm being sarcastic, but the point is you don't hear about that. Now, you do hear about Sunni Muslims killing Shia Muslims and vice versa, and so that religion has been a problematic religion on planet Earth for literally hundreds of years.
Lars, let's talk about a few issues. It's been a few days since the Mueller report came out. We know you've been covering it at night, your Northwest show as well. But for people tuning in right now, mornings on KIDO Talk Radio, your initial thoughts and then the reaction yesterday that the House, well, we don't want to impeach, but we're going to impeach, but we might impeach, but we're going to impeach.
I double dog dare them to do it. And they won't do it. But let me get to that in a moment. Let's start with the Mueller report. Number one, if you look at who did the investigation, in a lot of ways it was completely unlike anything that you would see in American law enforcement, and that's wrong. Because let's say the Boise Police Department had a major scandal. I don't know if that's happened before, so I'm not talking about a real case. But if the Boise police chief says, I've got a scandal going on in my department, I want it looked at, do you know what he would probably not do? He would probably not assign detectives from within the Boise Police Department to investigate. Now, I know every department has its own internal affairs for relatively small stuff, but on something big, the chief would probably call another jurisdiction, maybe in another state, might call Spokane. Say, can I borrow one of your detectives, somebody with a lot of experience, come down and really go through this thing and find out who's doing what, and we will bring them to justice. That's how you do a clean investigation. And if you don't believe me, I challenge any prosecutor or district attorney or police chief to tell you, oh, no, we always do it internally, because internally is always a problem. Well, in the case of the Mueller investigation, if you wanted to hire a crew of people to investigate Donald Trump, do you pick people who are politically allied with the woman who lost to Donald Trump in the presidential election? The answer is no. Seems very easy. You don't hire attorneys who gave money to the Hillary Clinton campaign. There are lots of attorneys who probably didn't give to either campaign, and were not politically allied with anyone. But Robert Mueller did exactly that. A majority of the lawyers he brought on were people who were politically aligned. One had actually worked for the Clinton Foundation. Now, why would you expect an independent kind of look at things if you hire people who already have a political dog in the fight. Well, he did it. But having said that that's not the right way to do it, when you produce a result that says we found no collusion on the email hacking, we found no collusion with Russia to change the outcome of the election, no collusion between Russia and Donald Trump or Donald Trump's campaign, and you find that there is no obstruction of justice, when it's coming from a crowd that is aligned against President Trump, and they still determine, yep, we looked and we didn't find anything, that's a pretty good, solid result. It's not the way I would have liked the investigation to have been done, because I think you should have hired people who were sort of apolitical. But having done it with political people, at least those of us who support President Trump, and I do, can look at it and say, if you ever needed a test of a president, have the people who are already biased against him do the investigation, and when they can't find anything, then you know there was nothing there to be found. So, having seen this and having had Democrats for the last 2 years lie, and one that continues to lie is Congressman Adam Schiff from California, who continues to insist that he has evidence that collusion occurred, evidence that Donald Trump was involved in the hacking, evidence that there was obstruction of justice. Well, if he has it and he hasn't given it up, then he's guilty of obstruction of justice. Otherwise, he should shut up, because he doesn't have any evidence of the kind, and he knows it. So if the Democrats want to go out and say, we're going to vote to impeach Donald Trump, here's what could happen, Kevin. They could introduce articles of impeachment. You know that Senator Elizabeth Warren, Hiawatha, has suggested that the House start articles of impeachment, which is easy for her to do. She's running for president, and she's a senator. She doesn't have to vote on impeachment, and because it starts in the House. But if the House Democrats decide to introduce articles of impeachment, they have enough votes to pass it. So here are the 2 or 3 different things that could happen. They could introduce articles of impeachment, and they could vote on them. And they could vote to impeach Donald Trump. It's the equivalent of an indictment. So when you hear about somebody who's indicted for a felony in Boise, this is the House indicting the president. And then the president gets a trial over in the Senate. And I'm reasonably certain that given the outcome of the Mueller investigation, the trial ends with Donald Trump not being convicted. Now, this is what happened to Bill Clinton, that he was impeached, and then they had the trial, and he was not convicted. But here's what also happens. All of the Democrats, and let's assume all of them or a majority of them, which is enough to pass it in the House, let's say they vote for articles of impeachment. What do the voters do in November of next year? I think they look at it, and a lot of Democrats are going to lose their seats in the House of Representatives, because the American people can see there's no reason to impeach this president. A good, thorough investigation was done, as I suggested, more thorough than was reasonable, because they hired people who were already biased against him, and they found nothing. So an awful lot of Democrats will lose their seats in the November election. Control will go back to the Republicans, and we can get back to business. In the Senate, I don't think there's any doubt that the Senate will not vote to convict President Trump. And if he's to be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, which does not literally mean a crime like a criminal crime, it means for misdeeds that the House determines are serious enough that he should be removed from office. Should he be removed because we have the lowest unemployment in American history? Should he be removed because we have a vigorous economy after 8 dismal years under Obama? Should he be removed because he's actually made progress on North Korea? Go right down the list of his successes. What is it you're going to remove him for? Because you don't like his style? Because you think he can be rude and crude at times? Let me tell you something. There are lots and lots of admired politicians who have questionable or have had questionable personal habits over the years, who have who've been rude and crude, and we admire them. We admire them, and we say we like these guys. Yes, they have, but we didn't hire them to be our best friend. We hired the person to be president of the United States. So if the Democrats want to do it, I say go for it. It only means that we can get back to a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican presidency, and Donald Trump will, I think he already effectively has, won another term in office. And America can have 8 years of success, and at the end of 8 years of success under Donald Trump, folks can say, did we like things better under Obama, or do we like things better the way they were under Trump? I know. And that'll make it easier to choose the next president after Trump in 2024.
Our great friend Lars Larson joining us. Catch him tonight, 6 to 9, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Finally, what do you make of this issue on the border where you have our troops being detained by Mexican troops in American territory?
I think that's an act of war. I really do. I'm not suggesting we go to war with Mexico, but I think we ought to slap Mexico pretty hard with sanctions. I'm not sure the president will do it. I think he likes the trade deal that we have right now. But this stuff has to stop. And the president, I wish maybe I'm sure the president is saying something back channel out of public view, which is probably the place to start. You call the head of Mexico and you say, you are not going to do this ever again. If you ever do this again, we will take your troops into custody and we'll hold them. And we'll hold them as criminals because they are criminals if they've come into our country and if they've crossed in without some legal authority. You know that for our people, we can't cross into Mexico. We can't send American troops into Mexico without doing it legally, and we don't do that. But the Mexicans seem to think they can do anything they want with that border. We need to disabuse them of that notion.
Lars, we always appreciate you firing it up throughout the Northwest and the nation. You have a great day. Can't wait to hear you tonight.
It's a pleasure, Kevin. Take care.
Our great friend Lars Larson. You can check him out at larslarson.com. By the way, before we get rolling here, why don't we hear from the lovely and talented and certainly cosmetically appealing Maxine Waters.
Well, Joy, let me just say and repeat that I have been calling for his impeachment for a long time because I understood very clearly who this man is, how he conducted himself during his campaign, and the kind of information we learned about him even before Mueller came on board. We've been waiting for Mueller to, make us comfortable with the fact that he is deplorable and he's not deserving of the presidency, and to find all of the evidence. Then we thought Barr, despite his background and what we know about him, was going to step up to the plate. And now we're waiting on the public to make us do it. The Congress really does have to.
There you have it from Morning Joy, and what a joyful bundle that is. Joy Barr and Maxine Waters singing the hits. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. I mean, to me, well, I don't even want to say anything because, I've got bills to pay, and they go after conservatives. But at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, first it was we need an independent prosecutor. Then it was we need the Mueller report. And never mind that it was stacked with liberals. Never mind that it was stacked with Hillary Clinton cronies. They got nothing. And now the end of the beginning of the end, they're going after the president one more time with impeachment. I mean, here we have Maxine Waters from California. And I know there are a lot of people from California. I'm driving on Chinden Sunday morning, going from Star to Holy Apostles Church for Easter Vigil practice. The traffic was insane. Took me 30 minutes to travel 10 miles. And you know what I saw in front of me and behind me? By the way, Joyanne Reed, I want to make sure I get my facts straight on that. A California plate, big SUV from California. California plate behind me, personalized California plate when I'm leaving. We talk about the drug-free effort. There's only one show, and the only reason why we say this is no one's going to market us but us, that has been warning about the California folks coming in and taking over Idaho. Now, there are good people from California, and then we have the San Francisco, Silicon Valley crowd. Now, you could all put this to rest, Californians, by really getting rid of your California arrogance. I'll tell you that next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. A show that proudly does not endorse the views of the Night King from Game of Thrones. By the way, hear it here first, read about it later. Breaking: the Supreme Court to consider workplace discrimination of the LGBTQ community. More on that coming up with Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity and Lars Larson. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. Before we get back to truth, consequences, and road rage and manners in the Treasure Valley. More of our devious little libs, the DLL, they're on the scene. They want to get President Trump.
I can foresee that possibly coming. But again, the fact is that I think we have to be very careful here. The American people, a lot of them clearly still don't believe that President Trump is doing things to destroy our democracy.
Well, he isn't, but the devious little libs, the DLL, they want to take down everyone else. That's Elijah Cummings. He thinks he's the boss man. Also, Representative Al Green, not to be confused with the singer, Al Green saying impeach President Trump.
I took to the floor of the House of Representatives and I called for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America. Where I stood then, I stand now. I call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America.
You know, I got to give it to the devious little libs. You never get Paul Ryan, John Boehner, and the Republicans to call for the impeachment of Barack Obama.
I have called on the House to initiate impeachment proceedings.
By the way, that's Elizabeth Warren. I have called on the House not to initiate Elizabeth Warren or her impeachment proceedings. By the way, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, if you're going to mandate that the president release his tax returns, let's mandate that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, the usual suspects, release their tax returns. KIDO Talk Radio time is 8:25. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. Larry, thank you very much. Remember, when you hear Larry Gebert on the radio, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. You know, we've had a fun program today. We've been using the word boss man because everybody pretty much wants to be the boss man. And you remember the Flintstones. If not, you can YouTube this. And just, you know, there was a character in the Flintstones called the Great Gazoo, little green guy. And I know it's very easy to be in the bed. I know it's a lot of people like listening to me in the bed, sometimes in the shower as well, sometimes more than one or two people. But that, regardless of that, this is a family-friendly show. I know it's easy to just kind of get lost in streaming Game of Thrones or whatever, but America needs you. And in Idaho, we need you. You know, we take a look at the forces that are aligning against us. And earlier, I talked a little bit about this. They want to impeach the president. They want to take away our leader. They want to, you know, turn us into Libville. And here's something that, again, no one else is going to talk about. The reason why I'm saying that is I'm seeking to justify my existence to my employer so I can keep my job. And maybe it's a good thing, maybe it isn't. But I'm always going to self-report. The people moving in from out of state, not only the people from California, I couldn't believe it, Saturday. You know, the Catholics have this thing called the Easter Vigil. It's a 3.5-hour mass or service, call it what you will. And you have many people coming into the Catholic Church. It's a beautiful service. And again, it's a very long service. So you have to practice it. So again, Saturday morning, 9:45, driving in from Star to Holy Apostles. There you have it, Chinden and Meridian Road. It was almost like prep for this show. Californian behind me, California in front of me, leaving. There's another one with a personalized plate from California. This morning, the pre-show meal, there's a license from Texas. So not to just pick on the people from California because they're very sensitive and I don't want to trigger them. Here's a memo to everybody moving to the Treasure Valley. Maybe this place is for you. Maybe it isn't. Maybe if it's just a stop in the tour. I don't know. Maybe it's your dream to live here. Maybe you're a native. But man, please, do everybody a solid and go down to the DMV and become an Idahoan by changing your plates. Is that asking too much? Is it asking too much for you to change your license plates and quit ripping us off? Because if you're driving in the state of Idaho and you don't have Idaho plates, now this is my opinion. With all due respect, I think you're selfish because you're proudly promoting another state. Like we've promoted the Flintstones this morning with the Great Gazoo, right? you're promoting another state. It's not, you buy a home here, but you don't want to be a part of it. Well, these cost me thousands of dollars. If I were the boss of all law enforcement, the boss man of law enforcement, I would pull everybody over with out-of-state plates. Oh, Kevin, that's ridiculous. Just like invading Mexico is ridiculous. Well, sometimes you have to be ridiculous to get your point across. And that's what we're trying to do here. Is that asking too much of people? Never mind the crazy, wacky, zany road rage. Again, State Street this morning at 4:15 in the morning. Why anybody would be tailgating me for a block is beyond me. It's getting crazy. People move to Idaho to get rid of the crazy, wacky, overly cholesteroled, overly caffeinated society that other states have. Let's start acting appropriately. And look, you don't need me to say anything. I'm nobody's daddy. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Really appreciate that, Sean Hannity. We'll try and live up to those introductions. KIDO Talk Radio, your proud home of Fox News Radio in the Treasure Valley. Rachel Sutherland joins us live from Capitol Hill. Rachel, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
I don't know. Like I said, I already know that you, Sunday morning, of course, it was Easter, but, I went to Easter services Saturday night, so I got to watch the shows live. It was great. And here you have Rudy Giuliani on all the shows. But the big show, the big Fox, he and Chris Wallace went at it.
Well, absolutely. Rudy Giuliani was saying that basically there's nothing wrong with a campaign taking information from a foreign nation state. He also made the rounds on CNN's State of the Union and NBC's Meet the Press, kind of with the same message. And there was a lot of pushback on that because whereas Robert Mueller found no evidence of criminal conspiracy between any member of the Trump campaign or any U.S. person, there is still some information in the report that Carter Page and George Papadopoulos appear to be seeking out some of that information. They didn't get it, but the efforts appear to be there. So the White House strategy seems to be, trying to stay one step ahead of the story, and Rudy Giuliani saying there's essentially nothing wrong with it certainly caught headlines. He did also give a caveat on State of the Union, saying that he would advise a campaign not to do that out of an excess of caution.
Indeed, but it's, I love what Rudy Giuliani said to everybody. There are two sides to the story, and it seems to be the narrative, maybe it's the Democratic Congress, maybe it's Giuliani's own opinion, is that everything the president did should be investigated, but let's not look at anything else.
Well, I think that they are going to be looking at other parts of the 2016 campaign. We already know that the Inspector General of the Justice Department is doing a review of the FISA court warrant process. I think that's due next time, maybe about next month, about this time. So we will see some reporting on that, and the president has definitely called for this idea of investigating the investigators. And if the Steele dossier were used as the only basis for obtaining a warrant, that might be a problem, but I don't believe it was. I mean, if you read through the report and you see some of what Carter Page and George Papadopoulos were doing, if the U.S. government had any wind of that, and from what I understand, it didn't really name which nation tipped off, federal authorities here in the United States, but they received tips that this indeed was going on. So we'll have to see the underlying, if we ever can, because it's uber top secret, the underlying documents for the FISA warrant, especially when it comes to Carter Page.
And, Rachel, have you gotten your vacation requests in? It looks like you're going to have a busy summer. Could be all about impeachment.
I've actually been planning ahead. But, yeah, look, a lot of things are heating up. The campaigns are heating up. And so I do try to take some vacation, though. I
don't know if you're going to get any time off just based on, we've got, I forgot about the 2020 folks. You've got the impeachment and everything else.
Well, I don't. Look, there's only a handful of Democrats that are even talking about impeachment. They are on a conference call, the Democratic caucus, this morning. It looks like Nancy Pelosi is trying to get everybody on sort of the same page. You have a small but vocal group who want to move on impeachment based on the obstruction of justice case that was laid out in the report. But others are saying, look, they're saying we need to focus on the issues heading into 2020, health care, climate change, all the things that got them elected in the midterms.
Rachel Sutherland, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's hear what you have to say. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Tess, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller.
I am giving you my report from the Hemp Fest that I attended here this weekend.
Oh, you went undercover with the hempsters.
No, actually, I went down there with my cash to buy some gemstones because that's mostly what was selling down there. So I listened for the last couple of weeks of people really advocating for marijuana. And they did have the marijuana petition people down there. However, I didn't see a lot of people at the tent. Now, what I did see was a very confusing sign at the tent that said, keep kids away from weed, legalize marijuana. So I asked them about that, and what their argument was, well, kids, when they buy pot from the dealer also sells other illegal drugs to them. Valid point. But the problem is, if you're talking about legalizing marijuana for something like, say, medical purposes, how are kids going to access weed that way? Well, they don't. But in Idaho, like in a lot of other states, children start out drinking alcohol and using drugs because of parents' access to that. So now that being said, what you aren't hearing are the negative aspects of marijuana. So Idaho they're number 7 for suicide, they're number 10 for drunk driving. And so how do you benefit from legalizing marijuana by saying it'll help education, it'll dramatically affect the rural areas? Well, how do you do that when you already have a problem and you're going to introduce another problem? And they don't want to tell you about the side effects of marijuana. So you're talking about things, it's called cannabinoid hyperemesis. Okay, well, it's
all right. Well, you're starting to lose it. So back to Hemp Fest, were people smoking weed?
No.
Are you sure there wasn't that smell of marijuana around there?
No, a lot of stinky incense, that were around clothing and such, but I didn't really see that. Now, I didn't stay for the evening because people were down there, and it was nice, but I don't think most people came in probably till later in that night, so I would have missed that.
Well, Tess, we appreciate the story. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks.
Let's go to Hank in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Hank wants to talk about the upcoming marijuana wars here in the state of Idaho. Good morning, Hank.
Okay. I'll use both historical and recent experiences of my own. First thing, historically, in the Texas War of Independence, there was widespread marijuana use. In fact, Santa Ana was doing both marijuana and peyote buttons. And it affected the performance of the Mexican army at the Alamo. The mishandling of the assaults when 108 Texans held off a Mexican army of 5,000. Most of the Mexican casualties were done when people were stoned, firing into each other during these night assaults on the Alamo. The disaster that happened to the Mexican army of San Jacinto, they were all taking a siesta at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and Santa Ana was doing his dope on the blanket when the Texans, who were outnumbered practically 8-1, overran the Mexicans. They were drugged up. Same thing happened in the Mexican War with the United States. Definitely performed the performance of the Mexican army at the Battle of Sierra Gordo. When Winfield Scott basically got away with a daring flanking attack around a mountain position that they had on the road to Mexico City in 1847, and so I mean it does affect. You made the analogy that you couldn't conquer Japan with people doped up. We had problems in our military. When I was in the Navy in the 1980s at U.S. Cecil Field, you could smell the marijuana coming through the barracks door at NESC Cecil Field down in Jacksonville, Florida. And I also, when went on the USS America, found roaches stuck in the beds. The only way the Navy finally got a handle on the problem was demanding mandatory drug tests. That's when they began to clean things up in the Navy in the 1980s. In my experience, was on the drug usage. I think that if they do legalize marijuana in Idaho, I think trucking companies, various companies, have to have mandatory drug testing. This will be an imperative if you legalize this stuff. Every business will probably have to, in order to make sure that their employees are not impaired while working for them. And I think this is something that's going to have to be a mandatory thing if we go to this route.
Well, that's something that the pro-pot purveyors don't talk about, that it's a mind-altering drug. It's not going to keep us safer.
Well, you can imagine a lot of people died because basically Santa Ana was in the days from peyote buttons and marijuana when he's basically ordering these assaults on the Alamo. So I can imagine it what being widespread in the population of people, making, especially in the trucking industry, transportation industry. If you had people doing the weed, I think you'd have terrible results.
It'd be horrible.
Yeah, so you're going to have, in order for society to function under a legalized marijuana thing, I think it's going to have to be a condition of employment, practically universal, that you have drug testing. Otherwise, you're going to have this thing's going to get out of control.
Hank, great call. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Steve in Nampa, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. I wish I could have called in when that radical, whatever his name was, on. He was very adept and skilled at debating. I noticed that his techniques were kind of out of the Saul Alinsky rules for radical type of MO. I would like to have asked him if he would like to live in North Korea because people smoke marijuana there. That's the cigarettes that they sell. I'd like to tell him and you a story about a friend of mine who's a dialysis nurse who grew up in the former Soviet Union where they made it so vodka was cheaper than water because to her, and this is her story, they wanted people to be mind-numbed and controllable. Legalizing marijuana is just an excuse to get stoned. That's all it is. There may be some medical evidence that there's some anti-inflammatory benefits of one of the compounds in marijuana, but to actually smoke the stuff, and this guy says, it's just some weed that grows, you're going to get arrested for a house plant. Give me a break. If we allow this to happen in Idaho, it's going to be the last shoe to drop. Why would we do that? Why would we expose our children to the next generation of mind-controlled, Democrats? I ask you, sir.
I totally agree with you, Steve. We'll throw that out and get the response of folks. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Appreciate you listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Pro-Life joins us now. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pro-Life.
Yeah, Fox News is your news people, and I don't know what kind of arrangement, the ownership of your station has with Fox News, but it looks to me like Fox is going to try to go to the left, and they are going to the left. They hired Donna Brazile, and then I heard on the radio, and I hope this is not true, but one of the Murdoch brothers, they gave the maximum contribution to Mayor Buttigieg, and I think that's pretty
What
bad.
did you say, Buttigieg?
Yeah, Buttigieg, whatever his name is,
Mayor Pete.
Mayor Pete, yeah. But anyway, and then the Democrat Party said, well, we're not going to deal with Fox News unless they, then we're not going to have any of our debates with Fox News unless they, come over and give us better treatment. So Fox News, for just business reasons, and I don't know what they're doing with Mayor Pete, that is really stupid, but it looks to me like what's going to happen is that there will have to be a new news organization arise that will be for the constitutional conservative Christian liberal right-wing people.
Well, you just threw in the libs. Let me just say this about Fox News.
Yeah.
That unlike anyone else, we have a radio network. We don't have mystery news from crazy, wacky, zany liberals, and we're proud to be associated with Fox News. And Fox News has a certain direction. And again, we differentiate ourselves through our content, through our passion, through our conviction every morning here on KIDO Talk Radio. And if Sean ever goes, well, that would be a sign. But Sean Hannity is still there. Yeah. You remember Rupert Murdoch? He was buddies with Hillary Clinton. So because the Murdochs give to Mayor Pete doesn't necessarily mean it. Now, Donna Brazile, Fox has an interesting strategy that if the libs were smart, if CNN were smart, they would put on. I mean, if I were CNN, if I were the boss man of CNN, I would open up the purse and I would hire Bill O'Reilly. And I would let Bill O'Reilly do his show. And could you imagine the war between Bill O'Reilly on CNN and Tucker Carlson on Fox News? Rachel Maddow would be non-existent. And then what I would do if I were CNN, because they own AT&T and DirecTV and everything else, I would spend more money and I'd hire Megyn Kelly. Now, I'm not a Megyn Kelly fan. I knew Megyn Kelly when she was a reporter trying to back in North Carolina, back in my days there. But I would do that because Chris Cuomo, I put Cuomo on. I keep Cuomo. Don Lemon ain't cutting it. Anderson Cooper ain't cutting it. People don't care about those people. And then there'd be a big test. But, it's just like Jake Tapper on his show. And this is getting a little inside, but I watch all the Sunday shows. And, you have one person on that in 2012, she was in college and maybe one of a few jobs she's had, very limited life experience. She worked for Bernie Sanders, and she knows everything. And I remember, I guess at a young age, we all knew everything, but she says nothing. And that's just my opinion. Now, smart young lady on CNN doing a wonderful thing, but that just sets the tone, and you're going to get the tune out. Fox News, at least, will have a conservative or a liberal like Donna Brazile. How you handle Donna Brazile is when she talks about Donald Trump. Well, Donna, you got busted for tipping off Hillary Clinton, so you have no credibility. Well, and Donna Brazile, I've known her for years, very personable, very different from what you see on TV, but they like to mix it up. In fact, they go out of their way to make it too fair that they hamstrung conservatives, which you don't see with the libs. So that's the Fox model.
Yeah. Well, but
I'll say this about Fox News, and this is the last time I'll interrupt you, sir, is that we have an association where others are just fly by the seat of your pants, make it up as they go.
Oh, I understand that, but things will move to be where there will be a larger gulf, a larger divide between networks, and there will be some network arise that will be more conservative than Fox News, and it will be a national major one. It just has to happen. But anyway.
We'll see about that, but I think... and, we had Bill O'Reilly on. He's been on our program several times.
I like him.
He's done with it after they ran him out. But Bill O'Reilly and Megyn Kelly, there are two people that would create a network right there. Anyway, I've got to run, but God bless pro-life.
All right, we'll see you.
All right, Art and Star, hang on. You're next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Again, the fact is that I think we have to be very careful here. The American people, a lot of them clearly still don't believe that President Trump is doing things to destroy our democracy.
Right. Elijah Cummings there from CBS's Face of the Nation. Kevin Miller in the morning. Quickly to traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio getting you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. Art and Star, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Bring us home, brother.
Hi, Ken. Listen, this marijuana issue, a lot of misinformation is being put out there by the people that want to be marijuana smokers. But there was an article that was put out 10, 12 years ago that shows that the breakdown products of smoking pot destroys the kidneys over time. There's a part of the kidney called the loop of Henle. It's the major filter section. And I know a lot of people who are on kidney dialysis for the rest of their lives because they smoked marijuana. It takes maybe a year and a half before this effect kicks in. And if you are also an individual that is susceptible to systemic lupus erythematosus, that can be a trigger for that. And that's a hereditary type thing. It's an autoimmune disease. So it's very, very bad. President Ronald Reagan, he was trying to point that out. But a lot of people, they just don't want to listen.
And that's why we're here. Art, call back Love you. Glenn Beck is next. Ray Amaya, great job. God bless everybody. Keep the faith.